Feminist criticism is a literary critique that has the presupposition or discourse community that comes from a point where we're examining how a piece of literature is shaped by gender. Now, it encompasses a lot of different approaches. This is much varied, both historically and even where it's going currently. And so we have to think of it more as just a perspective by which we start to analyze it. The OER does a good job of kind of opening the door and providing some framework for us to kind of start to examine it. Gives us the perspective, some of the language that we can utilize as we start to look into it. It's by far from comprehensive, but it does give us some of the initial ideas necessary to even start discussing it. As with any of the critical literary theories that we've examined, you would really have to start doing research and looking at the specific schools that you want to get into of this form of criticism to really dig into it. So we look at it just again as a variety of different approaches. Now, this all started around World War II with Simone de Beauvoir, who started initially writing some formalized ideas in this regard. Now, critical theory, this formalization is one thing, but people had been talking about women in literature well before this. We can see Virginia Woolf writing Shakespeare's Sister, where she imagines Shakespeare's equally gifted sister, Judith, who didn't have the same opportunities or schooling and ended up committing suicide. Now, of course, she also pointed out how women were portrayed in Shakespeare's work or work around that time where they were often moving the plot. They were very exciting. They were eloquent. They were witty. They were really amazing. And yet, as they were portrayed as just these incredible figures, the reality of their opportunities or their lives at that same time was very constrained and subjugated. So even Virginia Woolf, who well before de Beauvoir had even started with that, was still considering aspects of feminism. But we still look at the World War II area as when it started to get formalized. It continued to evolve in the 70s. It shifted a little bit with Kate Millett. And so we started to see the earlier version, du Beauvoir, where it was really talking about how women were portrayed or even women's access to it. And then we move into the 70s and beyond, where you start to think about how literature reinforces patriarchy or how women are depicted, property, seductress, wife, lunatic in the attic, perhaps. And, even some of the different language that is utilized, and kind of also women's access as they start to gain entry into writing fiction and, how that kind of changes things as well. So again, it is a school that has continued to evolve. We had the earlier feminism, we had the later feminism, and now even in the 90s, we moved into a point where they were talking about post-feminism. And so that is another aspect. And it's continued to move on, and even now where we're getting into queer theory. So the thing to understand about this, we're not really trying to memorize terms, right? We're not really trying to memorize concepts. What we're trying to do is really think about this in terms of how to think about it, how to approach it, right? Recognizing patterns, specifically the patterns of authority and who has the authority, who has the perspective, and what perspective matters. And I think this is something you're going to notice quite obviously within the play we're reading, Trifles. So let's see, what are we doing? So again, as we're looking at trifles, you have to kind of consider, what's being said, who's being ignored, and those different aspects of it. So again, I really think this is a solid OER. It gives us an entry point into this discussion, kind of solidifies an approach and gives us some markers by which we can start to evaluate. But the more you read, do a little bit of study into the critique itself, and I think you'll find that there is a lot of points of access, and the different time periods are all still contributing very significantly to the overall study holistically. But now, as people start to identify or push at different ideologies or try to underpin their creation or where things are going, there are different points within this construct of criticism that kind of have evolved.